John Deere is struggling under the weight of President Trump's economic policies. The American icon is down 29% from last year.
So the point is that with all these doggone tariffs that the president has put on, it's increased the cost of new equipment. It costs more for the farmer to buy.
Across the American heartland, farmers are living through a crisis that is not of their making. When President Trump expanded tariffs in 2025, the stated goal was to bring manufacturing and jobs back home. Instead, the first people to feel the strain have been farmers. John Deere, the most recognizable name in farm equipment, reported losses of $300 million this year and warned of another $300 million by the end of 2025. The company's stock has dropped nearly 30% compared to last year, and more than 200 employees have been laid off. For farmers, every broken part or delayed machine is now more expensive, while their crops sell for less abroad. This is the starting point of today's story, one that contrasts sharply with how Canada has chosen to respond.
Because of the trade and the tariffs, a lot of our customers have said, the heck with the United States, we're not buying your commodities anymore. So things like hard red winter wheat are at an all-time low for the amount of price we get at the farm gate.
The daily math on a farm has become brutal. Import tariffs have disrupted the supply of tractor bearings, fertilizer, and chemicals. Costs rise each season, squeezing budgets already stretched thin. At the same time, export markets are closing off. Hard red winter wheat now commands one of its lowest prices at the farm gate. Many farmers warn that younger growers without financial reserves will not survive these conditions. When expenses keep climbing while grain prices fall, there is no margin left to invest or even to break even. Even established producers face the risk of going under if this cycle continues. What was meant as an economic strategy to revive American strength has instead put farm families directly in the crosshairs.
We're announcing today that we're acting to protect Canada's agriculture and seafood industries. I'm going to focus on Canadian canola, which has been hit with Chinese tariffs.
North of the border, Prime Minister Mark Carney recently unveiled what he called the most wide-ranging trade resilience package in the country's history. At its center is a new $5 billion Canadian fund designed to help businesses retool, diversify, and remain competitive. The plan includes retraining for 50,000 workers, an extension of employment insurance up to 65 weeks for long-tenured employees, and a streamlined job matching program. Just as significant is the introduction of a binding Buy Canadian policy, requiring federal agencies and crown corporations to prioritize Canadian suppliers when awarding contracts. For agriculture, the measures go even further. With canola exports facing Chinese tariffs and beef and lobster also under pressure, Ottawa pledged $370 million Canadian in biofuel incentives tied to canola production. Loan limits for farmers were raised to $500,000, and new funding was earmarked for international marketing to open fresh outlets. These steps do not eliminate the pain of global tariffs, but they demonstrate a clear attempt to cushion the blow and prepare producers for the next phase of competition. The contrast between these two strategies could not be sharper. In the United States, sweeping tariffs were applied almost overnight, leaving farmers trapped between higher costs and weaker sales. In Canada, the government chose to build a broad safety net while also pushing industries to adapt and diversify. Both countries faced the same global turbulence, but one is forcing its producers to shoulder the burden directly, while the other is spreading that burden through public policy. For farm families on either side of the border, the outcome is deeply personal. In the U.S., uncertainty threatens livelihoods that have lasted generations. In Canada, the government is betting that timely support and structural change will protect rural communities from collapse. The question ahead is whether America will continue on a path that leaves its farmers exposed, or whether it will learn from its neighbors' attempt to match resilience with responsibility.
But you never know with President Trump. He could pull the carpet out from underneath us in a heartbeat like he has before, or they get rid of their tariffs, and then we'll bring the booze back into the LCBO. And if they don't, then they aren't getting any booze on our shelves.
In Columbia, Tennessee, pallets of American whiskey are still sitting idle, gathering dust instead of moving to the shelves of Canadian liquor stores. Months ago, small distillers like Keith Clark spoke openly about their frustration, saying that 25,000 bottles bottled for Canada
had become homeless once provinces pulled U.S. liquor in retaliation. That frustration has not faded.
New data shows the Canadian liquor boycott cost the country about $500 million in revenue. Total liquor sales fell by more than 12%.
Today, as Trump's broader tariff package has escalated to a 35% duty on Canadian goods outside USMCA, the boycott remains one of the clearest examples of how Canada has used consumer power as leverage. What began as a warehouse problem in Tennessee has grown into a symbol of a wider trade rift.
The Distilled Spirits Council of the United States has been working with their Canadian counterparts, trying to convince leaders that when it comes to a possible trade war, they should leave liquor out of it.
Trump's tariffs were meant to pressure Ottawa. Instead, the most visible impact has been inside the United States. By mid-2025, industry data already showed that liquor sales in Canada had dropped more than 12%, with roughly $500 million in lost revenue across the sector. That figure did not come out of Ottawa's budget. It landed squarely on American distillers and farmers. Grain producers supplying corn and barley to these distilleries cannot simply stop and start production to match political swings. For them, the Canadian market was reliable. Once it was cut off, producers were left with unsold crops and fewer buyers. What was billed as leverage against Canada has turned into unsold inventory, lost contracts, and mounting frustration in U.S. heartland communities. For Canada, the liquor boycott has been both symbolic and strategic. Provincial liquor boards are among the largest single purchasers of alcohol in North America. By removing U.S. products from their shelves, they not only sent a political message but also created real economic pressure across the border. Importantly, Ottawa has kept its line consistent. Prime Minister Mark Carney has emphasized that Canada will not sign a rushed or bad deal, and provinces have reinforced that resolve by using their purchasing power as a tool of retaliation. While American distillers lobby Washington to shield the spirits industry from tariffs, Canada has turned the boycott into an example of how even a consumer market of 40 million can exert influence over American producers. What might have looked like a temporary disruption in March is now a steady signal of Canada's willingness to endure pressure while inflicting some in return. The liquor boycott continues, and U.S. producers are the ones calling for relief. The same dynamic is playing out in other sectors. Steel and aluminum remain under heavy duties, raising costs for American manufacturers. Auto parts face similar uncertainty, complicating cross-border supply chains. Canada, far from backing down, has diversified its partnerships with Mexico and Europe and is leveraging its role as a major energy and mineral supplier to strengthen its hand. The story of the whiskey sitting idled in Tennessee is more than a local problem. It is a cautionary tale about how tariffs meant to punish Canada have instead punished American businesses. Liquor may seem like a small slice of trade, but it carries political weight because it shows that retaliation works and that Canada is not afraid to use it. Trump's gamble was that tariffs would force Ottawa to compromise. What has unfolded instead is a demonstration of Canada's resilience and the limits of tariff power. The whiskey still stuck in warehouses is not just inventory. It is a reminder that when trade wars turn into consumer boycotts, the pain rarely stays contained to the other side of the border.
Look at the Canada-U.S. relationship under President Trump is obviously one that's been strained.
On his European tour, the Prime Minister offers a preview of major spending to come with an eye to opening up new markets.
When Donald Trump raised tariffs on Canadian goods outside of CSUMA to 35%, it looked like a punishing blow. Lumber, steel, aluminum, and manufactured products were all hit with costs that threatened jobs and strained supply chains. Many sectors in Canada felt the shock immediately. Yet one sector stood apart: energy, from oil and gas to electricity. Uranium and the emerging promise of liquefied natural gas remained largely untouched. This reality has become Canada's shield in the middle of Trump's trade war. And it is not just protection, it is the foundation for a counter-strategy that shows Canada is not simply enduring American pressure, but preparing to turn it into leverage.
Our government is in the process of unleashing $500 billion of investment in energy infrastructure, port infrastructure.
Canada is the largest energy supplier to the United States. In 2024, according to Natural Resources Canada, exports included nearly 4 million barrels of crude oil per day, about 8.5 billion cubic feet of natural gas each day, and more than 11 terawatt-hours of electricity over the year. Canada also provided 27% of U.S. uranium imports, the single largest source. These flows are not optional. They are part of the backbone of the U.S. economy and critical to industries that cannot operate without them. Trump can raise tariffs on Canadian metals or manufactured goods, but shutting off oil from Alberta or uranium from Saskatchewan would risk blackouts, fuel shortages, and national security concerns in the United States. This dependency is structural. It gives Ottawa quiet but powerful leverage because Trump's tariff weapons lose their bite when applied to resources America cannot replace. That leverage is rarely shouted about in Ottawa, yet it is always present in the background of negotiations in Washington.
Expansions of the Port of Montreal, its operators say, would bring in $140 million per year, and of northern Manitoba's Port of Churchill to get liquefied natural gas to overseas markets.
Beyond oil, gas, and uranium, Canada is moving to add another card to its hand. Liquefied natural gas was once dismissed. Only 3 years ago, Justin Trudeau said there was no business case to ship Canadian LNG across the Atlantic. That position has now been abandoned. Prime Minister Mark Carney has announced plans for $500 billion in energy and port infrastructure investments. Central to this package are expansions at the Port of Montreal and the Port of Churchill in northern Manitoba. Montreal already handles critical mineral shipments and could generate $140 million per year once expanded. Churchill, sitting on Hudson Bay, is being positioned as a gateway for LNG to overseas markets. The logic is clear. Europe is desperate to reduce its reliance on Russian gas. Canada, with vast reserves and political stability, is well placed to supply part of that demand. Carney has said his phone blew up with interest from investors as soon as the plan was signaled. Businesses read it as a policy shift with teeth. The creation of a major projects office by Labor Day is intended to fast-track approvals and coordinate environmental reviews with provinces and territories. For Canada, LNG is no longer an afterthought. It is an arsenal being built in direct response to the pressure created by Trump's tariffs.
Trump believes tariffs can bend allies to his will. For Canada, those tariffs have been painful in certain sectors, but they have also forced a national reckoning. By doubling down on energy and by opening new channels for LNG exports, Ottawa is reducing its exposure to the U.S. market while strengthening ties with Europe. Oil, gas, uranium, electricity, and now LNG together form a foundation of leverage that no tariff can erase. Trump may be writing the rules of the tariff war, but Canada is writing a new playbook in energy. What began as a shield against American pressure is now becoming a weapon of strategy. Far from being cornered, Canada is showing it can turn a storm of tariffs into an opportunity to redefine its role on the global stage.